You're listening to Demand and Disrupt, the podcast for information about accessibility, advocacy, and all things disability.
Welcome to Demand and Disrupt. I am your host, Kimberly Parsley.
And I'm your co-host, Sam Moore. Happy Easter, Kimberly.
Happy Easter, Sam. How are things going up there in the North Quail Motel?
Well, it's beautiful today as we record this happy little podcast. In a few days on actual Easter, I don't know if that's going to be the same according to the forecast. But luckily, I'm too big for Easter egg hunts at this point. We've had several in this area that have been canceled due to projected inclement weather. So,
oh, that's sad. But you know what? You're never too old for Cadbury Easter eggs. Do you like a good Cadbury egg?
Gosh, it's been forever since I've had one of those. I like, pretty much anything that you could stuff in an Easter egg, I would always gladly devour, especially jelly beans. Jelly beans have always been a weakness of mine.
I am such a snub. I like jelly bellies, but not jelly beans.
Oh, yes. In fact, that's really what I meant, because jelly bellies are the bulk of what I've had. They're bigger and definitely better than the jelly beans.
My daughter got me, this is a hot take, here it comes. My daughter got me a bag of just butter popcorn jelly bellies. So how do you feel about the butter popcorn jelly bellies?
I've never had those. I mean,
oh my gosh, they're so good.
I like popcorn and I like jelly bellies, but I just can't, I can't see those flavors meshing.
It's maybe something you have to experience,
Yeah, it's kind of like I didn't used to think barbecue chicken pizza would be good. And then I had it and I liked it.
I'm still a no chicken on pizza kind of person. But then again, but then again, people don't like fish tacos and I like fish tacos. So
yeah, mom does too. I'm not too big on the fish tacos, but different strokes for different folks.
There you go. Now that we've made everyone hungry, Sam,
yes.
You did our interview today. So tell us who we're talking to.
I did. He was great. His name is Greg Trainer. He lives on a peaceful piece of property right outside Pittsburgh. And he hosts an Accessible Hunter podcast along with his cohort, Mike Hudson, who is actually in South Carolina. Now, both of these men had incidents, which you will hear about, that left them paralyzed. But through it all, they have still managed to find ways to hunt. They're both avid hunters, and they have overcome their disabilities quite admirably, and I think you'll be quite fascinated by the adaptive equipment they use to make hunting happen for them.
Well, that is interesting to hear about. I listened to your interview and it was just amazing. All the things that are out there for people who want to continue pursuing hunting and fishing. That's so interesting to me. Now, are you much of an outdoors person, Sam?
I definitely love the great outdoors. I'll just be honest, I've not had much inspiration to actually dive into hunting yet. Although, as we'll hear, some folks with visual impairments have, and Greg will tell us about that. I've not been too tempted to, partake in that just yet, but I do enjoy the simple things like sitting on a porch swing or lying in a hammock, swimming, boating, all that stuff I'm all about.
Yeah, that's kind of me too. I do like bird listening, I guess,
Oh yeah. When the birds are singing, that's quite soothing.
I like, I have an app, I believe it's by Cornell, puts out an app called Merlin Bird ID where you can record the bird sound and it can identify the bird for you. So I think that's, that. Yeah. So that's.
Do you have a hammock, Kimberly?
I do not have a hammock, but I have a screened in back porch. So
okay, that works. We used to have a hammock, but it's seen its last day. So if we want to partake again, we'll have to invest in a new one.
I think now getting in and out of a hammock, that's kind of a skill, right?
It's kind of an adventure. I do recall that. It's once you get there, it's comfy and you don't want to get out for a while. But when you do, You have to sort of work at it.
Really holds on to you, doesn't it?
Right. Absolutely.
Greg Trainer, of course, is, like you said, from Pennsylvania. And I want to go ahead and take the opportunity to plug the Appalachian Assistive Technology Loan Fund, which is our partner here in Kentucky to supply low and no interest loans for assistive technology.
And it's also based in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it's based in Pennsylvania. Yeah. So I believe you did our interview with Ryan Creech a while back about that. Yeah. So
if you want more details on that, we spend at least 2 or 3 minutes on it during our chat.
So great program there for both Kentuckians and people from Pennsylvania. What's a person from Pennsylvania called? A Pennsylvanian? Is that'd
be my guess?
That'd be
Pennsylvanian.
Anyone listen to this, if I'm wrong, reach out and let me know.
Yeah, send us an email, demandanddisrupt@gmail.com.
Right. And another place you can find Demand and Disrupt is we are now on YouTube.
Yeah.
I know. At least the audio is up there. Now we're working on the video. We're working on learning how to do that.
We got to start somewhere.
Yeah. Getting past my hesitancy on doing that. I'm going to figure that out. But we are podcast. The audio is posted to YouTube. And so I'd love for you all to check that out. And especially they have a captions feature. So I would love for some of our deaf and hard of hearing folks to give that a try and let me know how that captioning feature works. We're still, of course, going to provide transcripts, but I'd love to know how that works. So
give us feedback. That's just another outlet that you can stay in touch.
Exactly. And I'll put that link to YouTube in the show notes. And
perfect.
I've always wanted to say this. So you all check us out and hit that subscribe button.
Yes, absolutely.
So we're hitting the big time now on YouTube. So
it's not that hard, but it means the world, that subscribe hit.
It's very important to us. Yes, exactly. So, alrighty then. Now let's take this chance to listen to Sam's interview with Greg Trainer, the Accessible Hunter.
Well, the Accessible Hunter podcast is perfect for those who are countrymen and women or countrymen and women at heart. It's not just about hunting. It's about how those with disabilities and special situations can adapt and adjust and enjoy the great outdoors. And so we have one of the two hosts of this particular podcast with us today, maybe potentially the second one. If he decides to chime in here, I will gladly let him in on the party. But we have one of them anyhow. And so we're going to learn about their background, how they met, their disabilities, how they deal with them in the great outdoors, and some of the special guests that they've been privileged to feature on their Accessible Hunter podcast to this point, which is going strong, by the way. So joining me direct via Zoom from just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is none other than Mr. Greg Trainer.
Well, thank you, Sam. I sure appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk with me. And I appreciate everything you're doing to let people know that there's different ways to get outdoors. And I'm really just glad to be a part of your podcast today. Thank you so much.
We're glad to have you. And like we mentioned off air here, you're far enough away from Pittsburgh to still enjoy the country life, but close enough to get there when you need or want to. You said you're about 20 miles south of the city there, but you got to be a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, right?
Yeah, I grew up watching the Steelers, and I'm not what you would call a huge sports fan as far as the NFL and things. And in baseball, we're having kind of a rough go with our Pirates the last probably 15 or 20 years, and the hockey team's not doing so good. But I follow it pretty casually. But I'm glad to be a part of the Pittsburgh community because I know a lot of people love the NFL and the sports teams, and it's just a really good group of people to be around and a good place to come from.
Yeah, between the Pirates and the Penguins and the Steelers, there's plenty of teams to get behind. I had a guy from Pittsburgh tell me one time, he was like, "Sam, you don't understand. There are Pittsburgh sports fans. There are other sports fans, and then there are Steeler fans." So
You're right about that. And I used to follow the Penguins pretty heavily. I had season tickets. Me and my wife did for a number of years before COVID, and I always liked the good works that the Penguins did with the community. They've donated a lot of things, and they've gotten a lot of people interested in hockey that could not afford the equipment. And I know Sidney Crosby's foundation used to outfit kids from head to toe, from helmets to skates, and really give people an opportunity to try the sport and try to get out. So they sure do a lot of good work for the community.
well, I always like to hear about sports teams that are involved and get people involved, uh, in their surroundings and get them interested in their sport and what they're doing. So it's great to hear that the Penguins are such a great asset to the city there. Well, Greg, let's talk first, since you're an avid outdoorsman. You co-host an outdoor podcast. So talk, if you would, about what made you fall in love with the great outdoors and when exactly this happened, sir.
Well, I was fortunate that my dad was a hunter. He was a casual hunter. He got into the sport later in life himself, but like a lot of people here in southwestern PA, we all go hunting. At least we used to. And when you turn 12, you kind of go and take your hunter safety course. And the first day of deer season, the schools shut down, and everybody kind of goes out into the woods with their family and friends, and it's kind of a family experience. At least that's how it was for me. So I was introduced to hunting really early. I started shooting at the range with my dad whenever I was 10 or 11. And then, as I said, whenever I turned 12, I got my hunter safety course and started hunting white-tailed deer and rabbits and pheasants and squirrels just locally on some of the local farms that we had access to. My dad would ask for permission to hunt certain places. And we're also blessed here in Pennsylvania with a lot of state game lands. I know not everybody's fortunate to have public access and public lands, but here in Pennsylvania, we sure do.
Well, that's so neat, and the fact that the first day of deer season was actually a no school day in your neck of the woods. That's
It
pretty awesome.
it
Can't
it
say the
really
same about my hometown, even though we do have our you know country parts.
it really was, Sam. And not only did we usually take the first day off because that was a given, that was a holiday. It used to follow the Monday after Thanksgiving, but I'd probably take 2 or 3 days and play hooky and still go out and try to do some hunting. So it was probably the first 3 days and the first Saturday every year that we kind of look forward to.
Oh God! So you were usually off that Monday anyway, and you would drag it out in some cases to
if,
Tuesday or Wednesday and just
if my mom and
prolong
dad
that weekend as much as you could get away with.
if
But
my mom and if my mom and dad would let me, I sure would. I'd beg and plead if I didn't get a deer that first Monday. And then, as I got a little bit older, I started working, part time in high school, and I met a really nice guy that was just a few years older than me, maybe 5 years older than me, and he was really into archery season, archery hunting and turkey hunting, and his name is Mark Pyle, and he became a lifelong friend, but he really mentored me as far as archery and turkey hunting. As I said, my dad was kind of a casual hunter, and Mark took it really pretty serious with scent control, and archery is a whole different game when you have to get really close. And that's when I really fell in love with hunting in the outdoors, was archery season.
oh, when archery rolled around, well, that's neat. It's great that you had such uh, fond experiences and such great exposure to the great outdoors, and you still do. So, we're going to fast forward a little bit now, and your incident was in your early 20s. I know we'll talk about that here momentarily, but before that, Greg, why don't you give us some insight into what life was like for you prior to um, your incident? Were you going to school? Were you working? What was happening for you in that time frame?
Well, my injury, I had a diving accident. It actually happened whenever I was 31. So I
Okay, a little later than I
li-
thought.
little later in life. So, growing up, I graduated high school, and then I went to Penn State University, and I got my bachelor's degree in administration of justice there. And I went to work and worked, a couple different places all over the country. Really, I worked down in West Virginia, and then I worked out in Kansas and up in Massachusetts. So I traveled around for my job, quite a bit. I was working with Payless Shoes for about 10 years when my injury happened. And I had a diving accident in a lake and broke my neck at the C4 or 5 level when I was 31. And that really, changed everything, to say the least.
Oh, I can imagine for sure. So which lake was that? Just curious.
It was on Cape Cod in Massachusetts, Glen Charlie Pond, actually.
Glen Charlie Pond,
Yeah,
okay, in Massachusetts.
yeah. So
Yeah,
that it's been 26 years. I haven't really thought about it
yeah. Oh,
that
you're
that
fine.
much.
I just thought if it was a big lake, maybe I would have heard of it. Maybe some of our listeners would, but I definitely haven't. But anyhow, so you were 31 when this happened, and let's talk a little bit about some of the complications that you had to deal with and sort of fight through in the days, weeks, and months following this incident.
Sure. Well, fortunately, I was with a friend of mine at the time, and when I broke my neck, everything stopped. I mean, I didn't have any movement whatsoever instantly. So I was kind of floating on top of the water, and Matt Cepas is the guy I was with. He got me over to shore, and they called Life Flight, and they life flighted me up to Boston to Brigham and Women's Hospital. And I was in Brigham and Women's over a month. I was on a ventilator. I had pneumonia several times. It was a really touch and go situation. If I wasn't in the shape I was always athletic. I had a karate school in high school, and taught for about 5 years after high school, and
Oh, you taught
was
karate. How cool.
taught karate, was a varsity fencer for Penn State, and I was really pretty athletic, and I think that's what saved me. Even at 31, I was in good shape. But I spent a little over a month in Brigham and Women's, and then I was flown down to Georgia to Shepherd Center, which I'm sure you're aware of it, but it's a specialty spinal cord injury
I have
hospital.
heard of that. Uh-huh.
And I spent several months at Shepherd Center, where they really, number one, they got me off of the ventilator, and they got me to really learn as much as I could about the spinal cord injury that I had and how I was going to go forward with my life. And one of the big things that Shepherd Center did was they had a fantastic therapeutic recreational department. And right, probably 2 weeks after I was there and got medically stable, they took me down to the gymnasium and let me shoot an air rifle using adaptive equipment. And I just
Uh-huh.
and I just thought, man, if I could still be able to shoot and get outdoors, that's what I want to do. But it took me several years after I got out of Shepherd that I wanted to go hunting again. But that always was in the back of my mind, that there was a different way to do it, and the technology was available. But it actually took me about 10 years after I got out of Shepherd before I wanted to go hunting again. And I went back to school and got my master's in rehabilitation counseling and assistive technology from Pitt. And in 2000 is when I started Accessible Hunter, and I started it as a blog just to kind of let people know, what I was doing, because when I researched adaptive hunting or deer hunting with a spinal cord injury, there was literally nothing out there, nothing available. So I wanted to kind of document it, and it rolled into something special.
Absolutely, I'd say so, and we'll talk more about that shortly. So you got your, degree in rehabilitation counseling. Do you serve as a counselor now, in addition to the podcast?
I did Sam part time for a while. I worked at Pit Rehab for a short time, and what we did was we did assistive technology evaluations to get people either back to school or back to work. So if somebody, had a disability with taking notes or reading, we would work on that type of technology to get them back. And I did that for a number of years part-time, but having a high level spinal cord injury myself, I could certainly empathize with people and knew how important assistive tech was and controlling their environment and getting them, through school and things of that nature.
Yeah, and you were a tremendous help to a number of folks in that capacity, no doubt. Now, you weren't, like you said, you weren't able to enjoy hunting for an extended time frame. In fact, it was 10 years after you got out of Shepherd. But in one of your podcasts, Greg, I remember you mentioning that an organization known as Buckmasters assisted you tremendously in getting back out into the great outdoors. So, for those not familiar, talk a little bit, if you would, about Buckmasters and the purpose that it serves and the means by which they eventually made it possible for you to resume hunting.
Sure. I contacted Buckmasters probably, like you said, about 10 years into my injury, where I got strong enough that I wanted to go back out. And they had a program, the Buckmasters Disabled Hunters Program. And I just sent them an email and I said, hey, I'm a high level quadriplegic. I'd like to get back into archery. That's always been my passion.
Mhm.
And what can I do? What type of equipment do you guys recommend? Because I had that experience at Shepherd Center with the adapted triggers and mounts. And I thought, well, you guys are the leading experts in getting people outdoors and back into hunting. And they contacted me almost immediately and said, hey, we have a mount, a real simple mount that you can attach to your wheelchair. And not only are we going to send you a mount, but we're going to send you a crossbow. So they did all of this free of charge to me, and I was really shocked and
How
thankful for
cool.
it. Yeah, because as you know, adaptive equipment can be so expensive,
Oh, yes.
and I was just so thankful that number one, they knew a manufacturer to be able to get this, and they were willing to send it to me. So they had sent me the mount. It was really simple, nothing fancy, but it held the crossbow. And me and my family, my brother and I, and some other folks would go to the archery range and started practicing again. And I thought, man, I can do this. I mean, I'm hitting the target really well. I'm shooting, 20, 30 yards. And if something stands still for me, if it's out in my zone, which I can move the mount 2 or 3 inches one way or the other, and that would translate to 10 or 12 yards at 20 and 30 yards. So if I could set up where I thought the deer was going to walk into that zone, I could actually get a shot at it. And
Yes.
yeah, I was surprised myself that I was accurate. Now by this time, Sam, I had had a lot of experience archery hunting. I had hunted a couple different states throughout the years, being able-bodied, and I wasn't new to hunting, so it was actually just relearning a way to shoot and aim and hunting from the ground in a wheelchair and a ground blind, as opposed to hunting from a tree stand. That was all new to me and different. And I had a big learning curve, but it was so much fun doing it.
And well worth it, I'd say. What's great that they sent you that mount and the bow free of charge. And I believe Buckmasters is based in Montgomery, Alabama, right?
I believe so, Sam. I believe so. And
I think I did
um,
read that. So,
and when I got that equipment from Buckmasters, I also contacted a group here in the Pittsburgh area. It was Whitetail Management, and these guys did deer management in the local cemeteries and parks that I thought would be ideal for me in a wheelchair, as far as accessibility to be able to get out. So I contacted them, and they were more than happy to let me into their program and take me hunting. And that year, I ended up getting a doe and a nice 8-point buck, and we donated the meat, and we were able to reduce the herd numbers in the cemetery. So it was a win for everybody, and I just could not have been more happy with the guys in the program. They were excited that a quadriplegic was able to do this and do it effectively. You know, I'm not saying that as a hunter with a disability, we can't do it. We just do it a different way, and we're very ethical, and it's just a great program when folks can do this for deer management.
Oh, for sure. You were probably like a kid in a candy store when you shot that doe.
I don't know if you can hear the excitement in my voice or not.
Oh, I still can, yes.
When that doe came by, she was just walking, and she stopped right in that little zone where I had the window, and I took the shot, and it was a great shot. She almost went down immediately, and I was so excited. You know, we called the guys over, and everybody was high-fiving and congratulating me, and I said, well, you know, I so appreciate everything you guys done getting me out here. And Joe McCluskey looked at me and said, Greg, you're not done, buddy. We have a buck tag. You have a buck tag, and we think you can get a buck today too. So I was just beyond myself when I got a doe and a buck on the same day. And
you felt like you'd hit the jackpot.
You know, sure. I was just really feeling that I was back doing something I loved, and it wasn't like a charity hunt. It was guys getting together that I had experienced my whole life. You know, I didn't really know these guys before I met them, but I felt like I knew them and bonded with them instantly because of all of our shared experiences, Sam. It was just remarkable, and I'm still friends with them all this time, you know, after, and just you meet the best people out in the outdoors for sure.
No doubt. And it's great that you developed such a camaraderie with these people that you felt like you'd known them all your life, even though you were just getting to meet them for the first time in many cases. Now, although you're in, well, just south of Pittsburgh, you proudly host the Accessible Hunter podcast along with your partner, Mr. Mike Hudson. The Mike actually resides in South Carolina, Greg. So tell us how you and Mike first crossed paths and ultimately struck up a friendship.
Sure. Well, Mike Hudson is just an outstanding guy. If anybody knows Mike, he is a retired police officer. He had a diving accident in his parents' pool, I believe, whenever he was 22 or 23. So he was pretty young.
Also, he was in his early 20s. Maybe that's what I was thinking about a little bit ago.
Yep. So he's actually, in June, he'll be paralyzed 30 years. And I just hit 26 years. But Mike was a Marine. You know, I don't want to say retired Marine because Mike would correct me on that he's always a Marine. And he has just such a great attitude. You know, he's a type A kind of guy that sets his mind to doing something. And he has a charity down in South Carolina called Roar Outdoors. And he's just a phenomenal guy that tries to get as many people out hunting and shooting and fishing that he can. And thanks to the internet, you know, we were crossing paths on a lot of different sites and mutual friends and things. And Mike and I have been doing podcasts probably, I want to say at least probably 7 years. We've been friends probably, I don't know, maybe 15 years. And it was a shared bond because we went through so many similarities. He had also went to Shepherd Center, but at a different time. And Mike went back to school, got his master's, and he's a man of God. He believes in helping people, and just a great guy. So he and I clicked. And one of the big things that we try to do is just encourage people all we can to get outdoors, whether it's hunting, fishing, just getting out with your family, getting out of your home and enjoying yourself, you know.
Yeah.
It's a great thing that I get to talk with Mike, and I'm sure glad that he's my friend.
Well, it's a great duo for sure. And it's wonderful that you've developed such a friendship and such chemistry on the podcast. Now, you actually started the Accessible Hunter show solo, didn't you, before Mike came into the picture?
I did. I started it, and it wasn't very long though that I pulled Mike in, because he brings just such a wealth of information, and when you're talking with Mike, it's always a good time. So I did start Accessible Hunter from a blog, and then that rolled into my Facebook page, and then that rolled into the Accessible Hunter podcast. So Accessible Hunter was, my creation. It all started from the blog, and my desire to share my story with people, so that we're not always reinventing the wheel. We all have great ideas, and if we can collaborate on things, you don't have to think everything up yourself. There's always somebody that's doing it maybe a little bit smarter, a little bit better, and I thought we could all learn from each other.
Yeah, and a lot of the greatest ideas that have ever been established have been team efforts. So it's great that you got that little community with the podcast, and it's going strong.
Sam, it's funny. We always say that the disability community is a small community. People by reputation. It doesn't take long to find out who's trying to manipulate a system or something like that. And Mike and I have both been blessed to hook up with some great people like Robin Clark, who runs the Virginia Wheeling Sportsman, and just different guys throughout the country. Robin, he's been hurt, I think, 50 years. So he's a wealth of knowledge. And then younger guys, like Chad Waladira down in Texas that runs Able Outdoors. We're all trying to do the same thing from our individual parts of the country, but thanks to the net and the ability to use assistive technology, we all get on and talk. And if somebody wants to go hunting in a different state, or if we meet somebody that's newly injured and they want to go out west or what have you, we generally say, hey, I got a guy for you to talk to, or I've got a girl for you to talk to that can help you out and point you in the right direction. So it's definitely a small community.
Yeah, so clearly it's been a blessing to an awful lot of people. Now, we could technically, I guess, devote an entire show to this particular discussion point, but as far as some of the disabilities that have been represented by guests on your show, talk about a few of those, if you would, and maybe some of the most fascinating means by which they've coped with the disability and conquered it in their efforts to make the most of the hunting realm.
Sure. Well, recently we've had a guest on, Aaron Ritter, who is a person that had limb loss. He lost a leg, and Aaron was in the military. He was in the Navy, and his injury isn't service related, but he does a lot of outback, like deep in the woods, camping and hunting and things like that. And Aaron's just a fascinating guy. So we had him on, and then we had a double amputee on, Cam Triblett, and Cam was actually carjacked and shot, and he ended up losing both legs. And Cam worked with Buckmasters. I didn't know it, but Cam worked with Buckmasters and was probably one of the guys that sent me the original equipment, many years ago. And then we've had on different ladies and people with spinal cord injuries and people that have lost their vision. We've had a couple of people that are blind on, and that's always a fascinating, disability to deal with in the outdoors, because I think there's maybe a little bit of prejudice or hesitancy when somebody is blind and you talk about using a firearm or a bow, and well, how does this person hunt? And it's really a team effort where they put a scope attachment on either a smartphone, or they have different screens that go on over top of a scope, and then their partner sitting with them will kind of touch them on the back or shoulder and kind of make movement without talking, of up, down, left, or right. And when that animal's in focus and where they need to pull the trigger, then they give them a double tap on the shoulder, and the person can fire the crossbow or the rifle, and they're highly successful. But that's a great example of where teamwork comes in.
That's neat. So it's all about those nonverbal cues.
It is, Sam. And no matter what disability we're dealing with, all of us need some type of assistance. I'm fortunate enough that I get a lot of assistance from my wife when we go hunting. She's not really a hunter, but she does everything for me. She gets me all set up, and she'll sit and take pictures, and we can have a great time hunting. But as people get older, if you have an older parent that is, disabled or not able to walk very far into the woods and things like that, sooner or later, we're all going to need assistance outdoors. So we try to encourage people to do everything that they can, but to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for it, and it can really be beneficial to not only you, but a lot of times when you're helping somebody, you get a lot out of that as well. If I'm able to help somebody and get them on an animal and get them out, then I actually feel probably more excited than they do sometimes.
Yeah, it gives you a great sense of pride and gratification, doesn't it?
It does, Sam. And we all take care of each other in some way, and it's just good to be a part of a community where you give back, because so many people have been there for me. So
Right.
I enjoy it. I really do, buddy.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned, what a big help your wife is when you're hunting, and that special mount that you use courtesy of Buckmasters. Is there any other specialized equipment that helps you to hunt more easily and effectively?
Sure. Well, several years ago, I upgraded my mount. There's a company in Indiana called Be Adaptive Equipment, and they've just been phenomenal as far as producing high level mounts and sip and puff triggers. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, Sam.
Sip and puff triggers. I can't say that I am.
Okay. They have an electronic trigger that you can plug into the USB port on a power wheelchair, or if you're in a manual chair, you can hook it up to a little 12-volt battery, and it acts like a car door lock on your cars. It's an actuator that when you take a sip on a straw, it activates and pulls the trigger straight back. And as many times as you suck on the straw, it'll keep pulling the trigger. So if you have a semi-automatic 22, you don't have to reload. You can just kind of keep shooting, or a high powered rifle, or even a shotgun if you have a semi-automatic shotgun. And
that's neat.
It really is. And they have done so much to donate to groups and charities to get this equipment out for people, so that not only an individual can use it, but the entire organization can take multiple people. So I've been using a Be Adaptive trigger, a sip and puff trigger, and then I designed a mount. My buddy welded it up for me, and I've been using that the last 7 or 8 years. That works specifically for me. But Be Adaptive makes a ton of equipment, a ton of mounts, and even fishing equipment that can hold your fishing rod and things like that. The other big thing is there's multiple companies that do track style wheelchairs.
Okay.
So that's a huge part of getting in the outdoors, because as you and I both know, Mother Nature is not generally ADA compliant.
Right.
And these
Definitely not.
These track chairs will go, like a small bulldozer, almost anywhere that you want to get them. I mean, I'm sure you could get it stuck, or if you were careless with it, you could probably tip them over and things like that. But there's several different makes and models available. Action Track makes a great chair. I currently have a Track Fab that's made in PA. A buddy of mine makes the Echo Rover. It's another great chair. And I think when you're trying to purchase one of these chairs, you want to look at, has the company been around a long time? Do they have a dealership close to me? What's their track record? That kind of thing. Are they able to fix it when it breaks? Because there's no real funding for these. A lot of people will fundraise on their own and do GoFundMe accounts and things like that. But the equipment's really expensive. It can range, between $10,000 and $20,000 depending on rehab seating and things. So it's a huge investment. But I definitely could not get out as far as I do in the woods without some type of track style wheelchair.
So the point here, boys and girls, where there's a will, there's a way.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and for all you avid hunters and fishermen out there that need specialized equipment, remember, be adaptive. And you said they're in Indiana, so I guess Indianapolis or thereabouts.
I believe so. And it's a family run business. Jacob and his parents are doing it, and his brother. And, they're always available if you have questions and things. And they're on the internet and everywhere, social media. But just a quality company that they probably are the world's leading producer of this type of equipment. But when you call, you either talk to Jacob, his brother, or his mom. It's not, overseas. It's not something like that. And
You're not
they
having to sit through a menu and punch in a
no,
bunch of numbers.
no, sir. And if you're going on a hunt and something breaks while you're practicing, they try to get you out the equipment right away. And I've had several instances where I said, "Hey, I'm going on a hunt. I want to have a backup trigger. Can you get it to me right away?" And they do. And I'm not trying to do a commercial for them. They're great people, and I appreciate what they do.
Oh, that's a testimonial from personal experience, which is always the best advertising, at least to me for sure. But anyhow, folks, make sure that you take a listen to the Accessible Hunter podcast with Greg Trainer and Mike Hudson. And we do need to mention before we call it a day here that just as of a few weeks ago, maybe a month, the show was picked up by the Outdoor Call radio app. So for those not accustomed to that at this point, give us a little feel for the Outdoor Call app, Greg, and all that it has to offer. Now, of course, including your podcast.
Sam, I was really surprised. I had been listening to Dan Young and his outdoor radio show a couple of years, really. And he does, great interviews with people, and just an outstanding guy. And I'm sitting in my house just a couple of weeks ago, and Dan contacted me and he said, "Would you like to be on the Outdoor Radio Call app?" And I'm like, I was speechless, Sam. I didn't know what to say. I was like, absolutely. And
it took a few seconds to muster up a yes, didn't it?
It really did. When somebody catches you out of the blue and says, "Hey, I've been listening to your podcast, and we think you have something to offer a greater audience, and we'd like to have you on the show." And he said, "We're gonna put you on Mondays with a couple other podcasts, and it'll be a rolling event every Monday. We'll feature a different podcast you have." So I was shocked and just thankful that somebody's getting a benefit out of it. It really made me feel good. And of course, I contacted Mike right away, and he was thrilled. And we've been on the Outdoor Call radio app now 2 weeks, and we're excited to be a part of it for sure.
Absolutely. So every Monday, you folks, if you download the app, you can catch the Accessible Hunter podcast. Do we know what time on Mondays, or does that vary?
It varies, Sam, because there's 2 other podcasts that they feature on Mondays, and I think it's just a rolling start. So when one podcast ends, another one starts.
Okay, so but this app it's a must if you're an avid outdoorsman, because it's outdoor talk 24/7, isn't it?
It is, and they do a great job. And there's some really awesome podcasts on there, and people that I've followed for years, and just down to earth people, that kind of enjoy what I enjoy, and I like listening to them. It's nothing crazy. It's all about the outdoors and people enjoying it and trying to get out.
Yeah, it's just you've got something in common with listeners and hosts, just in your love of the outdoors. So definitely worth checking into if you're a true fan of hunting and fishing, to say the least. So looking ahead, Mike, it sounds like you've got a great thing going with the podcast. The future is definitely looking bright. Do you have any goals that you and Mike have set for yourselves in the not too distant future that you'll be working towards?
We do. We're actually branching out a little bit with an Accessible Pursuits podcast, and
Accessible Pursuits,
and that's going to allow us to talk with people just about what they're doing in their everyday life, what their pursuit of happiness is, and not just concentrate on the hunting side of it. So as far as podcasting, we're trying to get that started. We've only done a couple of episodes of that, And we're looking forward to talking with more people that may not, focus on the outdoors so much, but maybe going back to school or their goals of adaptive driving or what have you. I think it kind of opens up the outdoors or opens out the audience a little bit for us. And first week in May starts turkey season here in PA, so I'll be doing some of that. I'm at the
you got to
archery range a
partake in
little bit.
turkey season.
Yeah. So I'm
For
looking
sure.
forward to that.
So keep your eyes open, ears peeled, folks, for the Accessible Pursuits podcast in the near future that will deal with the endeavors of folks with disabilities outside of the outdoors, shall we say?
I might steal that for a tagline, Sam. That's pretty good.
Oh goodness, just sort of rolled off my tongue. But anyhow, we'll be sure to keep you folks posted when that comes out and the debuts as well. But as for the Accessible Hunter podcast, obviously we mentioned the Outdoor Call app that you can download and listen to it there every Monday. I assume the podcast is available through most of the other traditional directories as well.
We are on YouTube, and we're also on Spotify, and you can either watch us or listen to us. And of course, we're on all the social media stations, podcasting on Facebook and Instagram and things like that.
Perfect. And from what I've observed, Accessible Hunter comes out. Is it once a month or thereabouts?
Well, we try to post really a couple of times a week on Facebook, but our podcast we do about once a month, and then of course every Monday on the Outdoor Call radio app. We sent Dan about 14 episodes that we thought people would enjoy. So every Monday you can check out a different one there.
You can check out a different episode each week on the Outdoor Call app, and of course you can also find him on the net, like we said. Which I know I've been using an email address. It's different than the one on your Accessible Hunter Facebook page. So which email address would you prefer that patrons reach out to you with questions that they may have as far as what we talked about today?
If they would like to email me, they can email accessiblehunter@gmail.com or message me through the Accessible Hunter Facebook app. Facebook Accessible Hunter, but accessiblehunter@gmail.com is a great way to get a hold of me.
Could not be any easier than that. Well, Greg, thanks a bunch. It's been very insightful and enjoyable. I hope you've enjoyed chatting with us.
Oh, Sam, it was wonderful talking with you, and I truly appreciate you taking time out of your day and having me on your podcast. And I'm looking forward to listening to more of yours and staying in touch and seeing what we can do to help each other in the future.
Demand and Disrupt is a production of the Advocado Press with generous support from the Center for Accessible Living based in Louisville, Kentucky. Our executive producers are me, Kimberly Parsley, and Dave Mathis. Our sound engineer is Michael Parsley. Thanks to Chris Ankin for the use of his song, Change. Don't forget to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. And please consider leaving a review. You can find links to our email and social media in the show notes. Please reach out and let's keep the conversation going. Thanks, everyone.